UFC Vegas 55. We have the legend Holm taking on the very tough Ketlen Vieira. Now, Ketlen Vieira getting another opportunity to square off against a legend in the sport. Of course, coming off that victory against Miesha Tate, she now comes into this fight as an underdog. So let's see how she delivers here. And the same goes for Holm. Let's see how she delivers. She's now up in her 40s. We know that she always comes in phenomenal shape, but let's see if the game starts to catch up to her a bit. Not sure if that's the case. Other than that, I do want to say the UFC did a wonderful job with the matchmaking all throughout this fight card. Just a few months ago, if you would have brought up a multitude of these fighters on the fight card and asked me who they should be fighting next, I probably would have picked the fighter that they're fighting on this fight card. So that's always a cool thing to see. So with no further ado, you guys know the routine. Let's jump into today's episode.
The teller, the teller, the teller.
It's another day. Left jab, right jab. This is MMA. Mixed martial arts, quick body parts, undefeated when I pick 'em. Who the champ, who the victim? Looking in my crystal ball, I predict the winner. Never stop fighting. If you lose, keep your chin up. Know how the game go. I'm a smart fella. Welcome to the show. This the MMA fortune teller.
The MMA fortune teller.
The teller, the teller, the teller, the teller.
What is up, you guys? We are back for another episode. We have the #2 ranked bantamweight fighter, Holm, taking on the #5 ranked bantamweight fighter in Ketlen Vieira here. Holm, you guys heard that right, ranked #2 still, creeping up on that 41-year-old mark, still at the top of the food chain. I really think that that says a lot. And, you know, if you guys aren't well versed on who Holm is, Holly is a girl that we've been watching for a long time. For all you hardcores out there, you guys know what we're talking about. From when she was in the legacy fighting scene, head kicking girls, showcasing her kickboxing skills when a lot of people thought it was going to be all about the hands, because a lot of people knew about her coming from the boxing scene as well. She was a staple at the Jackson Wink gym, and she has came along and has had a wonderful career already up to this point, and doesn't seem like she's done at all up to this point. Still looks to be in phenomenal shape. And then you have Ketlen Vieira. Ketlen Vieira had one of the biggest victories of her career just recently over Miesha Tate. And she's a tough cookie. So this is a good fight here. We take a brief look throughout the card. You guys know Michel Pereira is always a fun fighter to watch. Santiago Ponzinibbio brings the fight as well. Chidi coming off a big knockout, getting thrown in there with Duško. You know, Polyana, Viana, always a treat to watch. And, you know, Eryk Anders brings the fight. I mean, we got a couple interesting matchups throughout the card. Not a lot of big star names, but like I said earlier, when you really dissect these fights throughout the fight card, they're very nicely matched. I really believe that. A lot of these guys guys and girls were perfect matchups for each other. So I'm excited to see those fights play out. You guys know the routine. We're going to take a look over, a little recap of this past weekend's fight card. We did hit 2 of our 4 plays, so we went 2 against 2, and we'll get into the 2 plays I hit, the 2 plays that I did not hit. One of them was very frustrating. For those of you that follow me on Instagram, MMA Fortune Teller _. I think you guys know which one of my losses were. We'll get to the other one too, but one of them had a very disappointing ending. And with no further ado, we'll swipe over there. So UFC Vegas 54, we had Jan Blachowicz and Alexander Rakic in the main event. We'll start at the bottom of the card and we'll work our way up. Now, Andre Petroski gets the Anaconda choke nice and early against Nick Maximov. Now, you guys run the tape back here, okay? Yeah, it was not an official play of mine, and I did pick Maximov to win the fight, and I didn't even pick Petroski as an official play, even from the value standpoint. But let's be clear, go run back the tape, hit the timestamp on that fight. We did all discuss that the value was more so on Petroski again. So I saw people chirping about me picking Maximov when every single person was on Maximov. But I mean, if I'm going to say something, let's be clear. I said the value was on Petroski. It was the first thing I said when we started talking about this fight. And in retrospect, I'm just sitting here saying, yeah, I made a mistake. I should have capitalized on that value. I threw $50 on Petroski, right before the fight started. It is what it is. That's a small bet for me. Again, you guys know I bet on every single one of these fights. I did think Maximov would have prevailed there, but Petroski's a stud of a fighter, and I don't understand why the line was so high on Maximov. I thought Maximov would have really pushed the pace in the later rounds and been the superior fighter. But Petroski has some big time power, and he also showed that he has some nice submission skills. We know he has the wrestling, comes in phenomenal shape. I would like to see a little bit more respect put on Petroski's name. Tatsuro Taira takes out Carlos Candelario. This was a fight that I was very, very pleased to watch. This guy, this kid Tatsuro, not this guy, this kid Tatsuro, he is the real deal. We've been talking about him for a while. We've been excited for him to make his UFC debut. I think he more than showcased the skill set that he brings to the table. A beautiful striker. We saw him drop Candelario. We saw him work in the BJJ nonstop all throughout that fight. And props to Candelario as well, because he showed that he's a tough cookie as well, and did not get finished when I would say about 80% of the fighters in the division, if not more, are getting finished when they were in the positions that he was in. So big props to him too. Verna Jandiroba. You guys know I picked Verna to win the fight here. It played out exactly how I thought it would. I thought that Verna would get some takedowns in this fight and really steal rounds with her grappling. She's aggressive with those takedowns. She had some beautiful trip entries. And Angela Hill, believe it or not, even though she's been working on her takedown defense, she's been taken down as of recently. We saw Tisha Torres get some takedowns on her. I had a very strong feeling Verna was going to get the takedown there. Although, from a betting standpoint, I stayed away from this fight as far as official plays go. Angela Hill is a good striker, and she's always live to pull off the upset. But I had to be on Verna there. Michael Johnson. How about this? I posted this the day of the fights, and some people are getting real mad because I guess this is a common meme, and I'm learning the game with this stuff, man, because there's a lot of little kids that have these meme accounts over on Instagram, and they get really, really upset if anything you post kind of reflects a post that they did or whatnot. And he sent over all the troops to my IG. If you check the comment section on that post, the troops were after me, man. All these kids, they brought their crayons and their Capri Suns, and they came after me pretty hard. But I thought this was pretty funny. It's a common meme that I kind of put my spin on. And Michael Johnson's the type of fighter to starch KO Francis Ngannou with ease, and then one night, and then get 30-25 by Roxanne Modafferi, which is facts. But you know what? Michael Johnson, a really cool dude. He got another big knockout. It was a little reminiscent to that knockout he had against Dustin Poirier. It was a fun fight to watch there. And now we go to an official play here. Viviane Araújo takes out Andrea Lee. Viviane was my play here. We threw a 1-unit play on her, just a small one. It was we caught it at even odds, and in retrospect, of course, I wished I put more on this fight. A little bit of a wobbly start for Viviane there, but I think people really, excluding the commentating team, kind of oversold that little exchange in the beginning. If you really saw the strikes in slow motion, they were not nearly as flush as the commentating team made them seem to be. And then from there, Viviane just dominated Lee there. So Viviane is the real deal. She has jiu-jitsu skills, and her striking has really came along, and I thought she would be a little bit more fluid and athletic and stronger than Lee there. And then you guys heard a little bit of the controversy with some of the talk in the corner. What was your guys' thoughts on that? I think his name is I forgot his name. He's about to be fighting here. He's the karate fighter. He has a karate background. I think his name's Tony something. Name slipping my mind. But you guys know, we know what we're talking about here. And there's a little bit of controversy for what he said in the corner there. What were your guys' thoughts upon that? Alen Nascimento takes out Jake Hadley. When I saw Jake at the weigh-ins against Alen Nascimento, I was definitely concerned about the pick. I was almost contemplating swapping it up, but you guys know I've been very high on Jake, and no official play from where the line was at. This was a fight you should have stayed far from, I believe, when you saw them at the weigh-in, especially because Nascimento was the much larger man, and I wasn't necessarily expecting them to be that different in size. Is Jake Hadley an atomweight? Do we need to open up an atomweight division? Or is Nascimento making a crazy weight cut? I don't know, man. I really believe the size had a lot to do with the victory for Nascimento. Both these guys very technically sound, but Nascimento was just too heavy for him. And again, big props to Nascimento. We know he's a good fighter too there, and I think Hadley will bounce back with some good victories moving forward. Still very young. Manuel Torres, that gets the knockout over Frank Camacho. We talked about the development of his boxing, and we see it developing more and more. Big shout out to Frank Camacho, to an absolute class act. Just shot him a message over on IG. He liked it and whatnot. He's an awesome dude. If you've been seeing the content he's been putting out, he's just a class act, if you guys know what I'm talking about. Ketlen Njokuani gets the split decision victory. I thought she deserved to win those last 2 rounds. They were close. I was sweating. This was an official play of mine. I usually go after Ketlen Njokuani with the decision prop, but in this fight, I was just taking her straight up because we've seen Amanda Ribas have major flaws with her striking defense, and she did again. And her head was just sitting there on the tee, but Njokuani really just couldn't capitalize on the big shot there. But there's a reason why you don't take a decision pick or decision prop against Ribas at this point, because her striking defense is really bad, and she will be put out and down the line by some big time strikers in the division, like we saw against Marina Rodriguez. All right, so we hit the first 2 plays. It's going to get a little bit more rocky after that. Davey Grant, another knockout victory. Big props to Davey, looking good. That was a fun fight. Luis Smoker showed up too, and then we had 2 plays here. I went after two favorite plays. I'm sure some of you guys are going to try to go after me. I get it. I was going after some heavy lines, but I felt pretty confident in both these plays, man. Especially the Cutelaba play. I was very disappointed in his performance. I knew if he was going to lose this fight, it was going to be by getting clipped early in the fight or by getting caught in a sub early. I thought that he would have been able to avoid that and then really start to dominate the fight with his wrestling, or even potentially finish Span. Let me not say Spawn now, Span. That once Span starts to progress with his fights, he gets very wobbly and slows down, and I thought Cutelaba could have clipped him. Cutelaba made a horrible mistake sticking his neck in there like that. He lost his balance and then jumped back up and stuck his neck right in there. It was very awkward. Before that, though, just getting takedowns with ease. What a shame that he didn't let that fight progress a little longer, where they would have been a little bit more sweaty and you would have saw the wrestling really take over the fight, in my opinion. It was what it was, though. And then in the main event, I also had a play on Rakic, and listen, let me explain what I saw from that fight. Jan Blachowicz looked beautiful in the first round with the striking, and he won that round. His striking was very precise. Rakic was throwing some big shots that he was just missing, and don't get it twisted. If he was just, if he was a little bit better with his footwork closing the distance and he lands one of those big overhand rights, the fight could have been over anyway. Goes back to the second round. He wins that second round. You see him get the takedown and start to use some of the wrestling that we've seen used against Blachowicz at times. And going into the third round, he was starting to lose a little bit again on the striking side of things. But the round just started before that leg injury happened. And it's a very realistic possibility that he could have used some more wrestling to start stringing rounds off later on. It was anybody's fight. But I got to give props to Jan Blachowicz. He looked very good. And yes, he was getting the slight better of him. But again, it was 1-1 with Blachowicz winning the beginning of that third round. But don't tell me that Jan Blachowicz was just killing Rakic and he was going to win that fight for sure. That was not the case. But also major props to Blachowicz for checking all those leg kicks and getting the better of the kicking game. And that probably had something to do with that knee injury. Again, now it was not the leg that Rakic was getting kicked on. It was actually the leg that Rakic was throwing there. And I think it had to do something with those checks that Blachowicz was throwing. And then the rest was history, man. We saw Rakic down and out, and it was a damn shame because he still proved to be one of the better fighters in the division. And now he's going to be out for a little bit, kind of sets things back. You got Magomed Ankalaev, you got Blachowicz still here, Glover Teixeira, and then of course Teixeira now taking on. Excuse me here, man. These names are slipping me sometimes, man. I'm not letting that one get away from me. What's the matter with me over here? Of course, we got the big fight coming up. And watch this. I'm going to snag it right now. You ready? It's going to against Yuri Prochazka. Sorry about that, guys. So that's going to recap UFC Vegas 54. We move forward now. This card has some excellent spots to make some money. I think some of you guys probably already know some of the plays we're going to be talking about, or some of the fights we're talking about. Let's go forward. We got Elise Reed taking on Sam Hughes. Now, we talked about very nicely matched fights. This is a perfectly matched fight. Both these women remind me a lot of each other to a certain extent. I mean, first off, you break them down. They're the same age, 29 years old, similar in stature. Sam Hughes with a very slight size advantage. Both of them have had some ups and downs. Both of them were actually thought of to be decent prospects coming into the UFC, but like I said, they've had some bumps in the road. Of course, Elise Reed absolutely dominated coming into the UFC when she was undefeated, got smoked by Sijara Eubanks. Her ground game showed to be lacking. Sam Hughes losses to Tisha Torres. That was her UFC debut. Again, coming in, fighting a solid veteran in the game, and she got beat down. Losses to Loma Legbunmi and Luana Pinheiro as of recently, and then she had that victory recently over Estela Nunez. Both these girls coming off their first victory in the UFC just recently. Sam Hughes just beat Estela Nunez 3 weeks ago, with Elise Reed just taking out Corey McKenna a month and 3 weeks ago. So both these fighters just tasted their first victory in the UFC and showed to have good elements to their game. In both of their fights, you could have argued they lost the first round, and both of them showed very good resilience in the second and third rounds, coming back and taking those fights. And they look similar. When you watch them on tape, they look similar. They remind me of themselves very much so. Now, Elise Reed, in my opinion, is a little bit more of a fluid striker, a little bit of the better striker here. She has good head movement. You'll see her mix in some side kicks. Her hands are pretty solid. And the more her fight went on with Corey McKenna, she really started to look better and better, and she was getting the better of those striking exchanges. Corey had a takedown in the first round, and we saw Elise work on that takedown defense or make some adjustments to start to stuff those takedowns and get back up as Corey was hanging on her and start to score points there. So just take note that the striking and particularly the boxing is pretty good. Sam Hughes, in my opinion, a little bit more grappling oriented. I think we'll see Sam Hughes try to get the fight down to the mat a little bit more so here. And I want to be clear, if she can pull off anything or implement any type of tactics that are similar to what Sijara Eubanks did, at least could be in for some trouble here. If Sam Hughes can get the fight down to the mat and start to rain down some ground and pound. I mean, we saw Elise really look like a fish out of water there. But again, we saw some development and some progress with that aspect of her game in her last fight. And there could be a couple different reasons for why that happened. It could have been some UFC jitters. There could have been a couple of things going into that fight. So when I look at these two girls, first and foremost, we'll pull up the betting line here. When I look at the betting line, when I see Elise Reed at a -162 with the comeback on Sam Hughes right around +130, what comes to mind to me is that the line is kind of off. I think that this is more of a dog or pass type of fight, in my opinion. I think that Sam Hughes is very live to win this fight. Like I said, if she can get the takedowns. And then also, Sam Hughes showed to have some boxing skills as well and might even have a little bit of a power edge. And then also, when you look at the fighters that they've been fighting as of recently, you wonder maybe if it was a little bit excuse me, let me pull up who they've been fighting so I can explain a little bit more in detail. Estela Nunez, a stud striker that Sam Hughes was hanging with. Corey McKenna, a decent striker, likes to use her grappling a little bit more so. And when you look at it from that extent, maybe Sam Hughes' striking is up to par with Elise's. One thing I will say, though, is the loss that Sam Hughes had against Loma Legbunmi. The fact that she wasn't able to go in there and really try to drag that fight down to the mat when we know Loma has some suspect takedown defense. That's a little bit of a sign that maybe Elise, from what she showed in her last fight, could avoid the takedown game of Sam Hughes. And again, although Sam Hughes has decent striking herself and has some decent power, I still got to edge Elise Reed having the better striking overall from what I've seen. I will go with her having the better striking, and I can see her keeping this fight on the feet and just scoring a little bit more so. And I will take Elise Reed to win the fight, and I lean so more by decision. Sam Hughes is a tough cookie. We've seen her bloodied up and beat down, and she continues to come forward. And I don't know if Elise Reed's really going to stop her there. I will take Elise Reed to win the fight. Chase Hooper taking off Felipe Colares. Chase Hooper. Let's see, how long has it been since Chase has been in the octagon? Almost a solid year, which is a great thing for him because he's only 22 years old and he still has a lot to work on. I would love to see him have a year break between all of his fights within the next 2-3 years because I really think that it will do him justice. He doesn't need to go in there with some of these guys in this division getting smoked on the feet. Felipe Colares, a very tough fighter. All of his fights seem to be barn burners and very entertaining fights. Coming off that loss against Chris Gutierrez, a split decision loss. It was a fun fight. Chris Gutierrez, you guys know he's the real deal. Before that, he took out Luke Sanders. And then before that, I lost to Montel Jackson. We haven't seen Montel fight for almost a year now. Montel, a very talented fighter. And then before that, the split decision victory over Domingo Pilarte. And then real quick, the unanimous decision loss to Geraldo de Freitas, but that fight was actually close, and that was another fight that was very exciting. Okay, so Felipe Colares, a lot of his fights play out pretty closely. He brings the fight. He's tough. He has a solid chin. He's well-rounded. Chase Hooper, obviously more of or not more, he is the jiu-jitsu stud, the grappling stud, whose striking is very below par. It needs to be worked on. It's good to see him here getting some work in with Wonder Boy. Of course, one of the best MMA strikers we've ever seen, one of the best karate strikers. That's a good thing. He can continue to work on his footwork and his striking, and that will help him round his game out. I want to see him working on his wrestling as well. But again, maybe that doesn't matter as much, because if he can even pull guard, if he gets the fight down to the mat, he is dangerous down there, and he's very live for a sub in this fight, and he's very live for a sub against anybody. We know that Chase Hooper is as tough as it comes. We've seen him beaten down on Dana White's Contender Series, continuously coming forward, eventually getting the victory there. At the time, he was like 18 years old. The kid is a stud. I think we're going to see him start to really fill out with his frame, and the potential is for him to be hanging around in the UFC. But again, you heard what I said earlier. He needs to take more time off between his fights. He has a lot to work on. Felipe Colares is looking to be in phenomenal shape here. And I think that Felipe has some real potential to hurt Chase in the feet, bloody him up and hurt him, potentially get a stoppage. I think we'll see Hooper. We'll see Hooper hanging on him and trying to drag the fight down to the mat, where if things get ugly and Felipe makes a mistake, we can see a leg get snatched up, maybe some type of submission there. But other than that, I think that Felipe wins this fight. Chase had recent losses to Steven Peterson and Alex Caceres, Bruce Leroy. The Peter Barrett fight, shout out to Peter there. What's wrong with me today, man? I'm slipping up with all my names. Peter Barrett. How can I forget his nickname, man? I had the interview with him and everything. Slippery Pete. Come on now. Slippery Pete was winning that fight before he got caught in the sub. And, Slippery Pete, he's a good guy, does his thing. But, and then before that, the Daniel Tamor fight too. He eventually got the finish down on the ground. And all these fights, we've seen Chase get beat up a little bit before he comes back and whatnot. I could see Colares hurting him here. And I got to go with Colares to win the fight, who is a little bit undersized. Chase has that long frame, 6'1", the 75.5-inch reach, compared to Colares' 69.5, a 6-inch reach advantage there. But we will pull up the betting line, and you'll see Colares is right around a -160 with the comeback on Hooper at +145. I think that's a very accurate line. But when I was looking at this fight before I even busted out the betting odds, this is exactly what I would have envisioned in my mind. I was hoping that with Chase Hooper having the more well-known name, that we would have saw Hooper come in as a favorite, which I was really hoping to see. I was really hoping to see that Chase Hooper would be the favorite, but that was not the case. And I think that the public is pretty smart for what they're looking at here, man. People are adapting, and these lines are coming out very accurately, and that's where it should be at there. So yeah, my pick is Felipe Colares to win the fight, with the potential for him to get the stoppage, to get a knockout or a TKO finish. Jonathan the Dragon Martinez taking on Vince Vendetta Morales. Vince Morales, first and foremost, coming off a very big victory. He had that knockout over Luis Smoka, who we just saw finished again. Takes a little bit of zest off that finish there. Before that, had the victory over Draco Rodriguez. Was not necessarily impressed with either fighters in that fight. Jonathan Martinez is a fighter that impresses me. He goes out there time and time again and looks extremely fluid with his striking. I love the southpaw stance that he uses and how he implements it with his striking. He's just very comfortable on his feet. He's a decently well-rounded fighter as well. And, he's a fighter that I think that will definitely be hanging around for the long haul. Vince Morales, you're not going to see me poke too many shots at him right now, because I've been impressed with the fact that he's continuing to develop as a fighter significantly. I was down on him. You guys know that. If you remember some of my breakdowns of him, I was kind of down on him as a fighter, even since the Dana White's Contender Series showing that he had. I just feel like he was a little slow on the feet. His whole thing was his boxing, but I felt like his hands were kind of slow. But he's been continuing to grind, and he's definitely becoming a better and better version of himself. So you shouldn't really count him out in that type of aspect, that he's some type of bum. He's a good fighter. And, whether or not he hangs around in the UFC for the long haul, we'll see. He's 31 now. You know, we've seen Jonathan Martinez fight up at the featherweight division, but most of his fights have been at bantamweight, and he'll have a slight size advantage here, not much, a inch of height advantage and a 1.5 inch reach advantage. With his good footwork, he can try to use that even a little more so. I could see him landing some shots from the outside and being a little bit more accurate with his shots. Keep in mind, though, we saw Davey Grant, who has big-time power, crack Jonathan Martinez just recently and get that finish. Maybe Vince can land a big shot, but overall, I do believe that Jonathan Martinez will be the more fluid striker. I expect this fight to take place in the feet, and I think Martinez will outpoint him and outstrike him and get that victory. And Martinez is live to also get a finish in anybody, too. He throws beautiful strikes out there. He'll be throwing a 1-2 on you, and before you know it, he's reaching up, grabbing your neck down, and slamming the opponent's forehead into his knee. So I like the diversity of his strikes. He has a good leg kick, and I think Jonathan Martinez wins the fight. Omar Morales taking on Uros Medish. Uros Medish, man, coming off a very disappointing performance. When you take a look at that fight, though, in retrospect, and you realize how much Jailton Turner is surging as a fighter, it doesn't look as bad, because Jailton Turner, in my opinion, is really one of the top fighters in the division, working his way towards the top of the division. So the size and the skills that he brings to the table are a problem for anybody. And I think that Medish may have underestimated him a little bit, and he paid for it. And he was finishing the fight early. Eventually was rear naked choked in that fight. He was hurt in a multitude of ways as well. But I do think that Medish still brings some solid skills to the table. You see him getting it in over here. And interesting fact, training over at King's MMA, you see him putting in work with Marvin Vittori, Giga Chikazi, Rafael Cordero over there, one of the best coaches in the game. Keep in mind, this team has already matched up against Omar Morales and has came through with the victory, being in Giga Chikazi, who Medish is putting in work with. I think that carries a lot of weight. I still obviously believe that Medish is a very talented fighter. You guys know I've been high on him. And I'm not going to put him under the fire too much for that performance against Turner. Again, I think it was just a little bit of an off night at the office against an absolute savage of a fighter. Omar Morales, a very technical striker, a very solid fighter. He's a guy that puts in work with the best of them. I think he's been bouncing a little bit back and forth from Sanford MMA and one of his other gyms there. So, you take that for what it is, but do understand that he is a fighter that regularly brushes shoulders with some of the best fighters in the world, and he's a very technical striker. Now, when you look back in retrospect and you watch him against Giga, he got styled on, but Giga is just an absolute stud there. He bounced back with the victory over Shane Young, and then he just lost to Jonathan Pierce, a little bit of a different fighter though, who used his wrestling in that fight, and we know JSP's been really doing his thing. Medish is he's a taller fighter here by 2 inches, but he's going to have a 3-inch reach disadvantage. It's interesting. Medish, 29 years old, creeping more into the prime of his physical abilities. Morales creeping up on 37 years old. I like Medish here, man. I'm going to be taking the dog. We're pulling up the line here. Medish is right around that plus 130 range with the comeback on Morales from minus 150 up to minus 160 or whatnot. And I just think that this line should be more even. So if anything, I might even say Medish should be a slight favorite. I think that people are being hard on him for that last performance. He has fight-ending ability. If you want to say some negative things about Medish, he doesn't have the greatest of resumes, only 8 professional fights, not as many fights inside the octagon. Some of the guys that he's battled against were lower-level fighters. But, if you want to analyze some of the fights on his resume that we've seen that were against decent fighters. You had Alan Cruz, who's an interesting fighter. He's not a bad fighter. And Mikey Gonzalez is not the worst fighter either, if you really look into him. And he went out there and finished both those guys in the first round. He's been finishing a lot of guys early. There's potential for him to land a big shot on Morales and hurt him. Another thing, too, is Morales, when he gets tagged, he's a fighter that gets a little hesitant in there. So if Medish lands a big shot, I could expect to see Morales to be a little bit more in the back foot, and maybe Medish works his way to a decision victory as well. But the finish is obviously live. We know Medish is a finisher. I'll take Uros Medish there. Should I do it? I think I'm not going to do it this time, man. I've been feeling a little guilty every time I do it. I think you guys know what I'm talking about here. Parker Porter taking on Jailton Almeida. Jailton Almeida making his UFC heavyweight debut. Almeida, one of the true studs that came off Dana White's Contender Series, an absolute freak athlete who has some very well-rounded skills to go along with it. Great grappling, great jiu-jitsu, serious power. I mean, this guy is the real deal, without a doubt. He's been one of the most impressive fighters I've seen come from the show. Has made the decision to bump up to the heavyweight division for this fight, and Parker Porter is a big boy. All right, Parker Porter is not just some small heavyweight. He's a legit heavyweight. You see him here having a great night with this chick over at the CES MMA fights over in Connecticut, and seems like a good dude. Parker Porter he's gained the respect of a lot of people, including the teller. That's why you don't see me saying what I've been saying in the past. Parker is on a 3-fight winning streak, and he's won 4 of his last 5 fights. That one loss coming by way of Chris Dawkins, where he was finished there. And Chris is a talented striker, but since then, victories over Josh Parisian, Chase Sherman, and Alan Budat, who are all very below level fighters for the UFC heavyweight division. So this is a step up in competition. You guys know the deal with this. Jailton Almeida coming off that victory over Danilo Marquez. We had him mixed in a parlay, an official play there, easy money. The victory over Nazaredinov. Went in there, finished him, and I believe Almeida was the underdog going into that fight. Obviously, we got Jailton Almeida in this fight, and he's a heavy favorite here, and right around the minus 650 up to minus 750 range. And he's one of those fighters that the lines are getting a little ridiculous on. One of those types of fighters. People are freaking out about this kid. And again, check the lines on him from his last fight to this fight; they're very high. I got Almeida to win this fight, and does he get the finish here? Parker's a tough dude, and he's a big boy. I'm interested to see what these guys look like at the weigh-in. I want to see how their statures look against each other. I think that there's legit potential for Almeida to get a finish as well, and I will go with Almeida to win the fight. Joseph, ugly performance in his last fight. Holmes taking on Alen Amedovski. Joseph, the ugly man, Holmes, had a very ugly performance in his last fight against Jamie Pickett. It kind of made you understand why Joseph Holmes didn't get that initial contract when he got the rear naked choke over Shante Barnes. Whether you want to believe it or not, James Krause and his crew, man, they got a really good connection with Dana White. And I think that maybe, I don't know, I'm not going to say that they said not to sign him, but I think that they understand each other from that aspect. And I think that the word was that Joseph really wasn't ready for the big show. I know he went out there and he got that finish over Shante Barnes. But as we've seen, that especially at that point in time, he really was not ready for the big show. And he did go out there, and then he got another victory over at Fury FC where he took out Jonathan Patti, a very dangerous striker. And after he got that victory, that was on Dana White's Looking for a Fight. We saw that episode on YouTube. Dana White gave him the opportunity. It was a nice moment there, but I think it's all starting to come out a little bit that he's not as talented as some people thought. Okay. And he goes in there against Jamie Pickett and just looked bad, in my opinion. His striking was not looking fluid and looked a little slow. Now I will say this is a tailor-made matchup for him against Alen Amedovski. Amedovski's a tough customer, but really hasn't been able to figure it out. He was a guy that was knocking out guys on the, before he got into the UFC, fighting lower level competition. He brings the fight. He's aggressive. He's lacking in a couple of different departments. He's lacking in the grappling department. And, looking at this fight here, I will say this much. Joseph Holmes is actually a decently well-rounded fighter. He has some Muay Thai experience, if you want to call it that. I think he has one pro Muay Thai fight, but he has some striking experience. He's good with his feints to an extent against a guy like Alen Amedovski. Now, again, let's gauge what we're talking about here. I'm talking about against a guy like Amedovski, right? Compared to the rest of the division, I think that Holmes has a lot of growing to do, and I think that he's lacking there. But when I see how these two guys match up, I think that Holmes could hold his own with Amedovski. He's going to have a 6-inch reach advantage here. He's significantly taller, 6 inches taller. And then again, I talked about the grappling advantage as well. Holmes has some victories via submission. I could see him he is the larger man. I could see him using that to get on top of Amedovski and potentially win the fight there in a variety of ways as well. I need to see more from Amedovski before I could pick him in this spot here. Yes, I'm excited to see Amedovski come in. He's been putting in some work with Khamzat Chimaev and whatnot, training over in Sweden at All Stars, but it's just not on tape. The only thing that is on tape is that he's very aggressive. He'll throw a heavy overhand right. Maybe he clips Holmes there. I don't know about that, but he'll overextend himself and he'll get taken down. And I mean, he could also get starched on the feet like he did against John Phillips, where he was looking to engage in a brawl and make it a war, and he got clipped. Props to him for being man enough to engage in that type of fight. But, you know, he didn't get the better of that fight. John Phillips took him out. I got to take Holmes to win the fight. He's a 2-1 favorite. Not necessarily crazy about that line for the fact that I need to see more from him as well. It's a lower level fight on the fight card, if you ask me. But I think Joseph Holmes gets it done. I like that size advantage he has. Eryk, your boy Anders, taking on Yong Park. This is a solid middleweight matchup here. Both fighters, good strikers. We know Eryk Anders, a stud athlete. He brings some serious power to the table, especially on the feet. Yong Park, a very technical fighter. I think he definitely has the technical edge here, and will give the edge to Anders as far as his explosiveness and athleticism. Former Alabama linebacker, you guys know the deal with that. Eryk Anders has had a variety of showcases in his ability. You know, we see him go out there and get styled on by some fighters. I really like the way he looked against Darren Stewart in both those fights. You know, especially the first time around where he got the DQ before he threw that knee by accident. He was just looking very, very fluid in the feet and looked to be a little bit of a sharper, newer version of himself. And that was not too long ago. He bounced back in the rematch with another victory there. And then against Andre Muniz, people need to recognize that Andre is just a serious, serious threat. I've recognized that for a while, and I've been able to capitalize and make some money on that. This is a different type of fight. We're not talking about some BJJ specialist type of fighter. Yong Park is going to look to strike with him. Like I said, he has that technical advantage, so he's going to look to pump that jab. Anders will look to mix things up with his footwork, try to land some big hooks, and make it ugly. You guys know I've had the pleasure to chat up with Anders back in the days. He's a cool dude. You know, he's always been a guy that's kind of been, you know, one of the guys, you know what I mean, as far as a UFC fighter. He doesn't really carry himself like he's some type of big time person. He's just, you know, he's one of the dudes. And you know, I've always enjoyed watching his fights here. Yong Park, though, as of recently, we'll go over some things he's done as of recently. Victory over Marc-Andre Barriault. John Phillips looked good in that fight. The Tafana Njokuani fight, I really enjoyed the performance he put out there because he really showed to have some good fighter IQ. He was mixing in the takedowns. He showed different elements with his wrestling. If you want to talk about the Anthony Hernandez fight as well, I had an official play in Anthony Hernandez that cashed. I was sweating during that fight because Park was winning the entire fight up until the point where Fluffy caught him in that anaconda choke. So just understand that Park is a legit fighter. Park more in the prime of his career right now, 31 years old. Anders up there at 35, but still has a lot more to give, in my opinion. Anders with the bigger frame as well. This is a good fight here. I've been a little bit back and forth with who I wanted to take in this fight, but I gotta say, man, Ninja Turtle here, as his handle says, Park. I like the fighter IQ that he brings to the table. I like the jab. I think he has underrated boxing. And I'm going to take the technician here more so over the brute athlete in Anders. It could end up biting me. I would not be surprised if Anders comes in looking really good, mixing it up and landing some big shots. But I got to go with Park here. I like the jab that he possesses, and I could see him mixing in the ground game as well, mixing in some takedowns and doing some work there. Yong Park right now up towards the lower -200 range. I think there's potential for some value on Anders at a +190 line here. Like I said, man, Anders has that big power, and when he shows up, he shows up. So, but look for Park to just be a little bit of a step ahead and landing that jab at will, maybe hanging on Anders a little bit, maybe sneaks a takedown in here or there, kind of frustrates Anders. And I will take Park to win the fight. Polyana Viana taking on Tabatha Ricci. Polyana Viana, man, this is a girl I enjoy watching fighting. You know, she's got the whole, you know, she got the look, man, the whole Pocahontas bad girl vibe, man. She's fun to watch. Tabatha Ricci comes into the UFC undefeated. She has to take on Manan Farut up a weight class, the poor girl. And she was tough enough that she went out on her feet, never folded. A very tough customer. We know she has the jiu-jitsu background. We know Polyana Viana is a jiu-jitsu stud as well. We've seen her pulling off beautiful arm bars, 2 arm bars in a row. She also was arm barred herself the fight before that. So You know, she obviously has the ability to be subbed herself, even though she's seasoned down on the mat. Tabatha Ricci is a girl that could go out there and sub anybody as well. One thing I've noticed, and you see she's also pulled off an armbar within her last 4 fights. One thing I've noticed is that Tabatha Ricci has some decent boxing. She's decently polished with her technique and whatnot. She's athletic. She's not one of those girls that seems a little funky and uncomfortable on her feet. She has a nice 1-2. She has a nice hook. She's comfortable. She's an athlete. You know, when I was describing Vivian Araujo going into last week's fight, it's kind of how I described her, that she's comfortable, and you see that she's an athletic girl, whereas Andrea Lee's stiff, and she's like trying to learn how to be an athlete, but she's just a little bit more stiff. And that's exactly how I feel about Polyana Viana. When you watch Polyana on the feet, she is very, very stiff and awkward, very upright, and she's there to be hit. And I think that Tabatha Ricci will get the better of those striking exchanges, those boxing exchanges. Down on the mat, that's going to be a hard one to call. I think that things can go a little bit differently down on the mat, depending. That's going to be a little bit harder to call. But on the feet, I'm not a big fan of Polyana Viana's striking technique. I will give her the fact that she's aggressive and she's confident. In fact, if you want to run through her resume real quick, I do have to point this out. She does have a knockout victory over Amanda Ribas. So again, you guys remember I was talking about the suspect striking defense of Amanda Ribas. She got finished on the feet by Polyana Viana, okay? All right, and that was almost strictly based off the fact that Viana was just very aggressive and just throwing an onslaught of strikes. It really wasn't even, it actually was not technical or anything like that. So I will give the edge to Tabatha on the feet. Down on the mat, I'm a little bit intrigued to see how that goes. And another major factor in this fight is the fact that Polyana Viana is very, very easily taken down. Her takedown defense is very bad. So if Tabatha if she does want to get this fight down to the mat and try to use some control time to score some points, I think that will be there for her. But again, when you take down Polyana Viana, she is tricky down there, and don't be surprised if she's throwing up all types of subs on you and pulls one of them off. All right, so I will take Tabatha Ricci to win the fight. I was contemplating maybe going with Polyana Viana, but Tabatha Ricci, I think, is your better pick there overall, as far as just being more consistent when you break her down on tape. But Polyana Viana has had a knack of throwing the upset out, and she's a treat to watch. So that's one that I'm excited for. Guys, looking for a new sports book so you could slam my Florida Panthers to take out the Tampa Bay Lightning tomorrow night? Well, depending when you're watching this video, I'm talking about the Tuesday night game where my Florida Panthers are going to continue their run to the Cup. So if you guys are looking to slam that line, right now they're like a -150. If you guys are looking for a new sports book, reach out to me. I'll give you my referral link for Bovada.lv, the most respected sports book out there, in my opinion. And if you sign up through my referral link, we'll both get a little bonus, and I will also give you an entire weekend of my bets for free, so you get a little sample of what I bring to the table. If you guys are interested, you guys know how to get a hold of me. I got my email below, MMAFortuneteller@gmail.com, or you can hit me up on my Instagram or Twitter. Chidi Njokuani, the younger brother of Anthony Njokuani, taking on Duško Todorović. Duško, a fighter that's been a little bit of a letdown since Dana White's Contender Series, since coming over to the UFC as an official UFC fighter. When you really break down his overall skill set, it's not that impressive. His striking defense is not good. He likes to drop his hands and tries to roll his shoulders and move his head around and whatnot. It's just at times, yeah, it could look decent when his opponent's missing and they're exhausting themselves if they're headhunting. But it's way too much of a high risk type of style to live by, because it only takes one shot, and before you know it, you're out and you lose another fight, and you lose another fight, and you lose another fight. We saw that against Punahele Sariano, who was able to land big on him. Gregory Rodriguez landed some big shots on him. He did bounce back with the victory over Maki Pitolo. I'm not really that high on Maki, to be quite honest with you. Chidi Njokuani has grown on me, and I've been well familiar with who Chidi is. I've been watching his brother from way back in the day, from the WEC days. Chidi has a giant frame for the division. He's been fighting over on Bellator. He was on Dana White's Contender Series, and he's obviously a very complete fighter. he has impressed me as of recently. He really has impressed me. Of course, the performance that he just went out there and did against Marc-Andre Barriault was very, very impressive. He went out there, starched him nice and early, and Marc-Andre is a tough fighter to put out. So again, before that, had the knockout over Mario Souza, the Brazilian, victory over in the LFA scene. That's another thing too. Many fights over in the LFA scene besides Bellator. He's been around the block. We're talking about 28 pro fights compared to Duško's 13 pro fights. Chidi has some major advantages going into this fight here. A 6-inch reach advantage, a 2-inch height advantage. I think that Chidi is very, very live for a knockout victory here against a guy in Duško who is kind of a human Bob. And you guys know I'm referencing the Bob punching bag because I mean there's just no arms blocking the chin and blocking the head. So you see the beautiful leg kicks here by Chidi. Chidi, Bang, and Njokuani. I will pick him to win this fight. We'll take a look at the live line here, the betting line on this fight, and we're looking at a line of -190 on Chidi here. Almost a 2-to-1 favorite on Duško. If Duško is going to win this fight, Duško is going to have to really implement a clinch game, really make this a grueling fight, try to drag this fight into the deep rounds, to the later rounds. Maybe he has some success with some kicks as well and can try to just mix things up, make it dirty, and could potentially take a decision victory there. You know, maybe I'm being a little high on Duško as I've been talking about this breakdown here or doing this breakdown. He does do some things well. He's decently strong in the clinch. He has decent boxing, but I'm just so down on him for the way he has his striking defense, the way he implements his striking defense. And I think that Chidi is live for the knockout. I'll pick Chidi to win via knockout. Santiago Ponzinibbio taking on Michel Pereira. Santiago Ponzinibbio, you know, a fighter that did have a brief layoff. He came back, got knocked out by Jingliang Li, but bounced back with a big knockout victory over Miguel Baeza, and then he drops the fight to Jeff Neal via split decision. We know Jeff Neal's a talented fighter. We know Santiago Ponzinibbio is a very talented fighter. He's a dangerous striker, carries some big power. You guys remember the eye poke against Gunnar Nelson? I mean, he does what he needs to do to get the victory done. You know, raked his eyes. There was no let up in him. There was no, oh, I poked you in the eye. It was straight right into it, raking the eyes to a knockout victory. And you know, honestly, if I'm backing a fighter, I like that type of spirit. I want a guy that goes out there to get the job done. That's Santiago Ponzinibbio, an excellent striker, good calf kicks, good leg kicks. You know, he's getting up there in age a little bit. He's not the same old young Santiago Ponzinibbio. And now he takes on one of the more tricky fighters in the game, in Michel Pereira. It's been such a pleasure to watch this guy fight since his UFC debut. A lot of people thought, including myself, he was a little bit of a gimmick with the flips and this and that. Obviously, he had that loss as well against, I'll pull it up right now, against the Canadian, I believe, right? Tristan Connolly, was it? I believe he lost to Tristan Connolly, and that was a fight that he kind of gassed himself out. It was Tristan Connolly. He gassed himself out a little bit, and he didn't gauge his cardio. He's learning on the job as he goes. Obviously, he still has a lot of fights, but he's still learning with this different type of style, you know, different type of level of competition, fighting in the UFC. He absolutely dismantled Diego Sanchez, and since then, he's just been destroying guys out there. Or I shouldn't say he's been only destroying guys, but he's been putting on beautiful performances. Absolutely did destroy Zelim Amadayov, beat Chaos Williams, beat Nico Price and Andre Fiallo in the last fight. And those are reputable names. Chaos Williams and Andre Fiallo. And Nico Price too, you could throw it in there too. Those are legit fighters. Michel Pereira has proven that he is a solid fighter in the division at only 28 years old. And Santiago Ponzinibbio, a little bit more of your classic striker, whereas that is definitely not the case with Michel Pereira. Michel Pereira is going to throw all types of attacks at you. He's very, very fast with his boxing too. He is a guy that can drop his hands and get away with it. We're not talking about Duško Todorović, you know, winging his head around back and forth like a punching bag. You know, Michel Pereira is actually, you know, setting things up, man. He's setting you up when he's dropping his hands. He's using a beautiful type of defense that lures you in. He'll jump off the cage. He'll hit you with a Superman punch. He does it in a nice way. So You know, I got Michel Pereira here. I think that he's going to be a little bit quicker, a little bit more tricky, and I can easily see him winning a decision here against Santiago Ponzinibbio, who will be a little bit more, you know, your bread and butter, you're a little bit more meat and potato type of striker. Although it's good, it does wonders. His kicks are very heavy. His boxing is very heavy. If he lands a big shot, he could definitely hurt Michel Pereira as well. Both these guys' stats are pretty much the same. They match up very evenly. I will take Michel Pereira to win the fight. The line's very close here. I think that Michel Pereira will just be a little bit quicker here and land some shots that really get the crowd. Although I know it's not a full crowd, but they have the UFC Apex kind of roaring a little bit. Some people will like what he's doing out there. The judges will like what he's doing out there, and I think it'll be enough to get the job done. I'll take Michel Pereira to win the fight. All right, we made it to the main event, Holm versus Ketlen Vieira. We brushed up upon this fight a little bit earlier. Look at us now. It's late at night. We've been rolling here for a while, right? Probably about at least an hour, I'm sure, of recording time. You guys can see it on the YouTube here, but you know, I'll be editing this video, and you know, we're getting to it here, boys. Let's make some money on this card. All right, let's find our spots. Let's make some money on this card. There's definitely money to be made. You guys know the routine. If you're interested in my official plays, reach out to me. My email is below. You can shoot me a DM on Instagram, MMAFortuneTeller_. You could shoot me a message on Twitter, the MMA Teller. Or if you just want to go follow me on those platforms, I appreciate you guys. Hit that subscribe button too, man. We're right at that 5K mark. Be the guy that gets me to that 5K. I appreciate all you guys. I love all you guys out there. So shout out to you guys. They've been rolling with us all the way to the main event. Holm, the preacher's daughter. She's won 3 of her last 4 fights, taking on Ketlen Vieira. Ketlen's been a little bit win, loss, win, loss, win as of recently. Ketlen only 30 years old, with Holm all the way up towards 41, almost 40 and a half years old. Still looks to be in phenomenal shape. Check her out there. You know, Holly, in my opinion, is a stud athlete. She's a true athlete. Not only does she have the discipline and the mindset to be an amazing fighter, but she was definitely blessed with some real attributes. I mean, you see her body. I mean, you could work it all you want, but just to maintain the body that she has, I think it's definitely a little bit God-given, and you see it the way she moves around. We talked about it earlier about someone being an actual athlete compared to, you know, the fighters like an Andre Ali. Holm is an athlete. The way she moves is just beautiful, and I really enjoy watching her fight. Now, of course, when it comes to all the training and experience, forget about it. Pro boxing experience at the top of the game, kickboxing, all that stuff. Training at some of the best gyms around the best fighters in the world. Ketlen Vieira, though, she's no slouch. We saw her go in there recently, take out Miesha Tate in a tough fight. Ketlen Vieira, we talked about it earlier. We talked about meat and potatoes a little bit ago. Ketlen Vieira is your meat and potatoes. She's tough. She could take a shot. She has decent boxing. She'll pressure you. She'll try to bully you a little bit. And I think that's going to be her key here. She's going to have to make this fight ugly. She's going to have to really try to smother Holm, just make it an ugly dog fight. And Holly is going to look to use that beautiful footwork, land some nice kicks, use her boxing, go in and out. And that's going to be her route to win the fight. Holm, victory over Irene Aldana and Raquel Pennington as of recently. Those are 2 very, very respectable opponents. The loss to Amanda Nunes, and then before that, victory over Megan Anderson, lost to Chris Cyborg. Her losses are only coming to the best fighters in the world. Let's make that very clear. We'll scroll down a little bit. Even before that, lost to Jermaine Durandamy, Valentina Shevchenko, Miesha Tate when Miesha was at her prime. And, you know, before that, again, big victories over Ronda Rousey, Renault, Pennington. And then these were her fights over on the legacy scene and all that. But, you know, the beautiful performance against Betch Coeta. She shows at any time she could put you out. And I'm a big fan of the girls. Now, Ketlen Vieira, let's brush upon what Ketlen's been doing as of recently. Phenomenal. Say that 10 times fast. Ketlen Vieira, she had just recently lost to Yana Kunitskaya. That was a little bit of a red flag to me. Yana is a tough girl, but Yana is not really on Holm's level, in my opinion. Victories over Miesha Tate, who's up there in age now, who made the comeback and whatnot. Miesha squeaked by against a fighter that and Marion Renault, who's very up there in age, creeping up in her 50s. So, you know, is Misha really up on her game? You know, the victory over Misha, we don't really know where Misha's at right now. We got to see more from her at this stage. The victory over Sajar Eubanks, you guys know the deal with Sarge. She's up and down. You don't know what you're getting from her. And then a knockout loss to Irene Aldana, who Holly has a victory over. Split decision over Kat Zingano and victory over Sarah McMahon, some of her bigger wins. She has proven that she's a good fighter. I mean, she has enough on her resume. We threw out some names out there that are respectable that she has victories over. You know, let's see real quick. I'll pull up the rankings here again too, so we know what we're talking about. Juliana Pena, the champ. You got Holly Holm right here, chomping at the bit to get another title shot, and Ketlen Vieira is trying to work her way up too. So, how do I see this fight playing out? I'm going to go with the athlete here. I'm going to go with the footwork. I'm going to go with the technical abilities of Holly Holm to win a decision here against Vieira. I think that she does enough to get the decision done. Now, we'll pull up the betting line here. What do we think about a betting line of -250 on Holly Holm? I don't think there's a lot of value in that line. I really don't. I think that the value is more so on Ketlen as a 2-to-1 favorite. We've been seeing it recently. These dogs and some of these big fights are coming through. I wouldn't be shocked if Ketlen somehow made it ugly and everyone's talking about, damn, you know, Ketlen went out there and took Holly out, or she got the W. Wouldn't be shocked, but I think Holly gets the job done. And from a betting line perspective, more value on Vieira. All right, guys, the moon is coming up over here. It's getting dark out here, man. Still working on getting the whole studio set up. I know I'm not trying to make your guys' ears bleed out there, just keeping you guys updated. So obviously once that's all done, there's going to be a whole different production. You guys know that the lighting will be way better than this, everything. For now, same old videos like this coming at you for a little bit longer. Want to give a shout out to everybody that's subscribed to the channel, all my supporters. I love you guys. I appreciate you guys. If you're not subscribed already, please do, because we're about to hit that 5K. We're at 4.99. Let's hit that 5K, and then let's work our way over to the 6, 7, 8, 9K. I want to hit that 10K mark. It's all due to you guys, man. Big respect. Without you guys, I wouldn't have one subscriber, right? Or maybe I'd have one or two. You know, one of my own email account that I subscribe to myself. Without you guys, I'd have 2 subscribers. So appreciate you guys. All right. What should I leave you guys with? Make sure you guys are being disciplined with your bets. I want to leave you with a good, solid statement here. Make sure you guys are structured with your bets, what you have out for the night. If you start losing early on the fight card, take it easy. Do not start to chase. You don't want to dig yourself in a hole. All right, guys, stay structured. All right. Sometimes I know some of you guys are drinking, watching the fights. You guys know things can get out of hand. Always, you got to train yourself to stay disciplined. And remember, when you hear that message in the back of your head, that's when you finally get to a point where you actually listen to that message. And remember now, there's always another fight card the next week, or if you bet other sports, there's another line you can attack the following day or the following day. You don't need to chase it that night. Wait till you see some value on the board. When you see a respectable line or something that a play that you respect, that you feel confident in, wait on that. You can capitalize then, and you can start to chip up again. Do not try to chase to get all your chips back in one night, because I'm telling you, more times than not, it's going to turn out bad for you. All right, so make sure you guys are being responsible out there. You know, a lot of people watching the show, we're all big bettors out here, and I'm sure some of you guys are going through it because it's just part of the game. So you got to stay disciplined, and I don't want to see none of you guys go through that. You guys know I got nothing but love for you guys out there. All right, so with that being said, that's how we're going to sign off, and that's it. All right, guys, signing out. Teller.
Welcome to the show. This the MMA fortune teller. Yeah.
The MMA fortune teller.
The teller.